At 636 Holly Avenue. Jamie Albritton here with Dr. Steve Lacoste.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome back again. And thank you very much for hanging out with us with our technical difficulties last week. We're on our way to smoothing them out for our next interview, but here we are live in our usual format today. And happy to see you. While Steve is, we have so many things to talk about today. So while Steve is welcoming people into the chat room, I'm going to go ahead and start with all of the opportunities you have to see opera this week and in the coming weeks.
I don't think we're streaming.
There's a link. It says we're live.
Okay, so speaking of technical difficulties, Steve was afraid we were not live, but apparently we are.
I don't see you coming up here. I usually get a notification when you go live.
He usually gets a notification. Are you out there, everybody? I'm going to go ahead and continue for the time being. So tonight, I'm not going to tell you what's playing on the Met Player tonight because I have a little project for you all this evening. But I will say I'm very excited about tomorrow evening, Saturday night. You can see Un Ballo in Maschera live from the Met. And the cast is extraordinary there. It's Sandra Radvanovsky, Kathleen Kim, Stephanie Blythe, Marcello Alvarez, and of course this week is the Horostovsky's week. Salute to the late great baritone Dmitry Horostovsky. So he is also in that cast. So that's really a star-studded cast. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It may have played before, but boy, with a cast like that, it'll be worth seeing again. And then on Sunday, we have Verdi's Il Trovatore as well. So a wonderful Verdi weekend for us. And then I also want to talk to you a little bit about some other things that are happening around the globe and in your backyard. So first of all, I haven't mentioned the Vienna State Opera broadcast in a while, but Vienna State Opera is still putting out live stream as well. We've got the address for that. Connie's actually managing the feed today, and so she's going to slide in there two addresses for Vienna State Opera. One of them is actually the list, the menu, if you will, of what's coming up at the Vienna State Opera. So you'll get to see through March, beginning of March on that list. And then the other one is the actual player itself. The shorter of the two addresses, you can just click on that and get right to the player. Some exciting things coming up there. I should say this weekend, you can see the ballet Giselle on Saturday night, and then on Sunday, it's the Jean-Pierre Ponel production of Figaro.
One of the best productions of Figaro ever.
Exactly. So well worth taking a look on Sunday night. Then starting in March, we have Carmen with Piotr Beczkala. We have Otello with Roberto Alagno. Ariadne auf Naxos with, again, the late, great Johann Botha. Manon with Juan Diego Flores. I think we had a chance to see that earlier in the season, but what a great opportunity. Janacek's Kacha which is an opera you rarely will get a chance to see, and it will undoubtedly be done beautifully. Aida on a week from Saturday, and then on Sunday, March 7th, it's listed as live. Sunday, March 7th, we have the opportunity to see Traviata live from the Vienna State Opera with Preti Yendi and Juan Diego Flores, a very strong cast. We've seen Preti Yendi in things in the Metropolitan Opera series. She was in The Elixir of Love, amongst other things, so it's a beautiful voice. And of course, Juan Diego Flores sort of moving into more mature repertory from his days as the Rossini specialist at the Metropolitan Opera. And then finally on their current list is a new version of the Don Quixote story. It's actually a ballet as well, I believe. So I encourage you to take a look at the long address that's in your feed is sort of what's coming up with them, their schedule. And then the short one is actually the player. However, you'll notice that I've skipped over Friday very conveniently. Today, why am I wearing all black today? Because I'm dressed for this is my pit black because I'm going to be in the orchestra. Well, I'm kind of in the orchestra this evening. Yes. Because The Fletcher Opera Institute, both Friday this evening and Sunday afternoon, will be live streaming from the Stevens Center a double bill of salon operas written by Manuel Garcia Sr. Manuel Garcia is the father of Pauline Viardot, who will be our featured composer in the next opera produced here at Piedmont Opera. However, Manuel Garcia Sr. was also one of the greatest opera singers of his day, and just like Madame Viardot, he wrote these operas for his students to give them some performing opportunities, and they were performed in his home. So we're very excited to bring them with our students to life at the Stevens Center. They were originally written for just piano accompaniment. So again, that helps us out with our COVID restrictions. And the casts are only one opera has 4 members in the cast and the other has 7. So it makes it possible for us to bring these things with COVID restrictions and social distancing on the stage, makes it possible to happen. So we're very excited to bring these to life. And there's another wonderful reason we're very excited. The second of the 2 titles that we'll be presenting this evening, Un avvertimento ai gelosi, is a project that was edited by Teresa Radomski. Teresa Radomski lives right here in Winston-Salem and is on the voice faculty at Wake Forest University. So it's not really an official partnership, but how exciting it is to take a piece of scholarship by the voice department at Wake Forest and bring it to stage at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. So.
And in the intermission feature, Teresa was with me last Friday, and she's going to talk a bit about how she and her brother, who is also a Garcia head, I guess you would call them, and how they got into that idea of putting these operas together. And so there's a lovely intermission feature there. I will tell you, if you watch tonight, the intermission is 30 minutes long, so it's like a Met intermission, but because of the COVID protocols that we have to take, we have to have 30 minutes resting between the casts, and we have to take a rest before we can change the set. So but there's a lovely intermission feature there, and then you can watch a little slideshow and learn about what's coming up in opera at UNCSA.
So again, Connie has slid in the address over at the School of the Arts. You can go there and get your ticket. I hope that you'll consider tuning in tonight because the productions are a lot of fun. Steve's done a wonderful job, and the School of Design and Production has done a beautiful job of putting together scenic elements for us. And I might add also, speaking of projects, not only are we all doing salon operas from the family Garcia, but apparently Manuel Garcia has bequeathed his home to his daughter, because we'll be using the same salon to bring Cinderella to life, thanks to Madame Viardot. So I'm very excited about all of this happening. And what an extraordinary opportunity it is for you all to see sort of this entire family's compositional history rolled out in front of you inside of a month's time. And all of them from some of the greatest singers of the 19th century. Yeah. So it's really, to be able just to see how much the compositional styles change between, even within Manuel Garcia's operas, the 2 operas that we're presenting. The second of the 2 feels much more like a Mozart opera, where the first one that we're doing feels a little bit more like Rossini or Donizetti or something like that. And then, of course, when we get to March with Piedmont Opera's Cinderella, Viardot's style has changed completely. She wrote that opera in 1904, so almost 70 years has passed between the writing of some of those operas, and to see how much the styles have changed, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so let's say hello to Brennan Martinez, who's here. And Brennan you'll see Brennan, if you tune in tonight and Sunday, you'll see her. She's playing 2 very different characters, but very outrageous characters, so fun to step in there.
And completing the circle, Brennan will also be in our Cinderella too. So she will be the next Garcia head.
She and Cameron both, because Cameron also, one of our tenors, is playing 2 roles in these things, and he will also be in the Viardot coming up. So we say hello. So Brennan says woohoo, and Hal Garrison is here, and he says the photos from the dress rehearsals look great. So.
Thanks.
And Virginia is watching. Virginia Sheffield is watching, and Virginia is our resident diva. She plays. She's quite a dramatic character in this piece, and she's got a very lovely opera seria aria that she's doing quite good. It's been a great project, and really the only way that we were able to produce something that in a theater on a stage, and the singers will not be masked, but I can assure you that every precaution is being made safe, and every singer has been commented on how safe they feel in the makeup chair, in the dressing room, before they come on stage. They feel absolutely safe. So we're just grateful for the opportunity to bring you live stream. We wish you were in the theater, but this is the next best thing. So
it's quite odd to be in the theater and finish an aria and go into a recitative, and we are all so used to taking that breath, and instead it's like keep going, keep going, keep going. So we're really looking forward to you coming back to the theater.
Absolutely.
I want to give you one more production to take a look at before we go on to today's topic, and that is, we mentioned this last week, our good friend Emily McGee. Her portrayal of Puccini's Tosca is available to you all now with the Dallas Opera, and Connie's going to slide that link in there as well. I haven't had a chance to see her show yet, but I think it's on for another couple of weeks. So you can watch this at your leisure whenever you like over the next period, but I think it'll be well worth seeing.
Yeah.
So with that, unless you have anybody else to welcome in, Steve?
I think that's it for now. There are people here, but they haven't said hello. So if you say hello,
I'm going to say hello
so
to
if
you.
you say hello, then I have to go out and click back in, and then I lose the feed. So I'm not going to touch it. So we'll just wait. But Brendan says the costumes are outrageous.
They are. They truly are.
So now we're going to get back to our finale for Black History Month.
Yes, exactly. We've got two more great artists to bring to you today that we're anxious to share with you. And both of them are, the beautiful thing about both of them is that they have spent a certain amount of their career giving back. Both of them have done and continue to do everything they can to educate the next generation of artists. And actually the one I'm going to speak about today also, interestingly enough, has a lot of North Carolina connections again. I want to talk to you about one of the great sopranos of the middle century, the previous century, and that is Dorothy Maynor. Dorothy Maynor is a singer that first came to my attention. Actually, one of my very first voice teachers gave a fellow in my voice studio an old RCA album. It was an album, and there was a picture of this joyful lady on the front. She had a curious hairstyle. She had two little buns on the top of her head and a little thing in the center, a little silver piece of decor, and it said, "The voice of Dorothy Maynor." And I was like, who is this? I'm curious. And I made him play the record for me. And what a beautiful voice she had. And I would later discover what an interesting woman she was, because her hairstyle actually represented her background, because she was born of both African American and Native American heritage. And that little piece of jewelry in the center was a piece of Navajo jewelry that she always very proudly wore, so that she was always identifying with all of her heritage. Beautiful, beautiful singer. She was born actually in Norfolk, Virginia, so similar to Camilla Williams, right up the street from us here. And similar to Camilla Williams, grew up in the church. Her father was a pastor, and there was always singing in her house. She said, Ms. Maynor says, "My sister played the piano. It was a rare day when we weren't singing in the house to her accompaniment. But it was just the sort of thing that you might find at almost any home around town. I was always singing in my father's church, but it was while I was in public grammar school that I was first encouraged with my singing. It was by the school's woman principal." So again, in the 20s and 30s, it was even rare that their woman be principal, and she wanted to underscore it was by a woman principal that she first said, "You have a talent, my dear." And her talent wasn't just singing, it was also her intelligence. They decided that the local public schools weren't quite up to the level that Dorothy could rise. So in 1924, they sent her away to the Hampton Institute's preparatory program. And it was there that some extraordinary things began to happen to her. The Hampton Institute had a very famous choir that went on tour every year. It was quite an elite organization. And in her second year, she was encouraged to audition for that choir. That choir was directed by Robert Nathaniel Dett, or R. Nathaniel Dett as he was known. And I wonder if any of you that sing in choirs, if that name is ringing a bell for you. We'll come back to Mr. Dett, Dr. Dett in a moment. Dett later selected her as a soloist to go out on tour with the choir, and one of the choir stops was Carnegie Hall. The performances were critically successful. She sang solos with the choir in Boston, the Philadelphia Music Academy, and she toured with the choir all over Europe. She had received her master's degree. After all of these tours, she was not hailed as an individual, but as a shining member of this choir, if you will. She graduated with a master's degree in science from the college in 1933, but she always stayed in touch with Dr. Dett. Now let's just take a sidebar for a moment and talk about Nathaniel Dett for a minute. When I saw the name, I immediately recognized it. For those of you who don't know me, and I'm still, choir directing is my true passion. And I grew up, my master's degree, everything is in choir directing. And I recognized Mr. Dett's name from a spiritual I did both in high school, and I've conducted it with my church choirs, and it's called Listen to the Lambs. And I wondered if it was indeed the same R. Nathaniel Dett, and it was. He was a very famous musician, originally Canadian born, came down and got an education at Oberlin in Ohio, and ended up, as I say, initially at the Hampton Institute in Virginia, where he built this tremendous choral tradition. But he was a great composer. While he was in Oberlin, he had heard a string quartet play some music of Dvorak, and of course Dvorak was always trying to draw, particularly I'm sure he heard the American String Quartet, as Dvorak named it. And Dvorak, when he was in America, was always leaning on the American folk tradition, and Dvorak said he really believed that the future of American music was in Afro-American spirituals. So I'm convinced when Dr. Dett talks about listening to this string quartet play Dvorak, that must have been what he heard. And it struck a very deep chord in him, reminded him of his mother singing to him, and that sort of led him on his compositional journey. And he wrote spirituals that we're all familiar with, and he set them both for choirs and for soloists. But he also wrote for a great many different ensembles, piano solos, different things like that. And his largest work, which I actually recently discovered, was a piece, an oratorio for soloists, chorus, and orchestra called The Ordering of Moses. So he was quite an accomplished musician. After he left Hampton Institute in Virginia, he came to North Carolina, and he was the choir director at Bennett College in Greensboro, just across I-40 there. And we'll return to Bennett College in just a minute, but that was his final academic position. Now coming back, because we're going to follow that journey of Dr. Dett with Dorothy Maynor, but let's now go back to Dorothy Maynor for a moment. So after leaving Hampton, on scholarship, she went to the Westminster Choir College in Princeton, New Jersey. She received a bachelor's degree in choral conducting. Smart girl, I say. But she was encouraged to sing. Everybody thought she had an extraordinary voice. So she moved across the river there to New York City, and for 3 years studied and was having a little bit of success, but wasn't terrifically encouraged. A couple of friends of hers arranged for her to attend the Berkeley Music Festival in Massachusetts. And of course, Berkshire, forgive me. And of course, the Berkshire Music Festival is the home of the Boston Symphony. And at the time, Serge Koussevitsky was their conductor, and he was part of founding all of this. We think of it now as Tanglewood. And some friends said, "You've got to hear Dorothy Maynor, Maestro Koussevitsky. It's an extraordinary voice." And he was not particularly interested, but they brought Dorothy Maynor up. She sang for him. And his response, a musical revelation. The world must hear her. And without missing a beat, Dr. Koussevitsky began to find opportunities for Ms. Maynor to sing with the Boston Symphony, and he recorded with her as quickly as he could. Shortly after that, she made her town hall recital premiere in 1939. That was a huge success. And that opened up then a Carnegie Hall solo recital debut for her in 1940. And the critics were so unanimous in their praise for her that they awarded her the Town Hall Endowment Series Award. So it was really the 40s when her career really picked up. But similar to Camilla Williams, remember when we talked about her several years ago, because of segregation, you could be a recitalist, but you couldn't perform with an opera company. And Ms. Williams was pushed in that direction by the generosity of an opera singer and a conductor. Ms. Maynard didn't find that kind of generosity. It was always concert conductors, Stokowski, Kusvitsky, all of these men that championed her. So her career was, even though she sang operatic arias, her career was exclusively on the concert stage. In the 40s, she traveled all over the country and frankly all over the world recitaling. She sang everything from Bach to spiritual settings that Dr. Dett wrote specifically for her. She became quite a champion of all that. It was during the 40s that she actually, and I have to credit a board member of ours for bringing this to my attention, in 1947, Dorothy Maynard brought a concert to UNC Chapel Hill, and it is credited as being the first integrated audience at UNC. And I want to read, this is from a UNC publication here. It says, when African-American Dorothy Maynard performed at UNC on January 19, 1947, she sang in front of what was probably the first integrated audience in Memorial Hall. An editorial in the Daily Tar Heel published a couple of days later declared, for the first time to our knowledge, a Negro and a white audience attended a concert in Memorial Hall without any segregation in the seating arrangement. This was Maynard's deal in her contract. She said, I'm thrilled to come and give a recital, but you have to understand there will be no segregation in my audience. And it was UNC president Frank Porter Graham who was credited with sort of accepting those terms and making sure that they happened beautifully. So Dorothy Maynard had a lot of connections to North Carolina in terms of providing us with our first integrated audience. We'll see more of her in North Carolina in just a minute. So as I say, throughout the 40s, she made a great success on the concert stage, and what I'd like to do now is play you a little excerpt of hers. This is a recording of her singing the great aria from Charpentier's opera Louise, Depuis le Jour. Depuis le Jour was Dorothy Maynard's signature. The thing that everybody commented about with her singing is she had a beautiful pianissimo and a silver tone on the top that was just, it was a different sound that people had not heard in a while. And that sound was featured to great degree in this aria. And for the longest time, Dorothy Maynard's singing of Depuis le Jour was sort of the gold standard for that aria. So here's Dorothy Maynard singing Depuis le Jour from Charpentier's Louise. Beautiful, huh? It's just that beautiful, her ability with the piano, singing up high, and that beautiful shimmer. It's beautiful. The 50s brought Maynard a little bit more into the political realm. She was actually the first African American to sing at Washington's Constitution Hall, where the Daughters of the American Revolution met. You remember? It had to go to a vote, and there were several women that dissented, but in the 1951-52 season, Dorothy Maynard actually appeared with the National Symphony at the Daughters of the American Revolution Hall, and it was the first time that an African American was permitted to perform. Shame on us all for having to mark that as a landmark, but there we have it. And in addition to that, on the positive side, Maynard was the first African American to sing at an inauguration. She sang the national anthem at Dwight Eisenhower's inauguration, although prior to that, she had appeared, now imagine this, at a presidential inaugural ball. Dorothy Maynard was part of the entertainment. Now, we're talking about Harry Truman here, who was a bit of we know his family enjoyed music. She sang the Alleluia from Mozart's Esultate Jubilate, and she followed that up with singing Were You There When They Crucified My Lord, again in an arrangement by Dr. Dett. Her career continued on the concert stage, but in the 60s, she actually gave up her career. In 1963, her husband, who was a minister, Shelby Rooks, he was a minister at a church, St. James's Church in Harlem in New York. He had a heart attack. And Dorothy Maynard wrote, "We discussed our future," she said. This was in an interview in the 70s. And it was decided that she would give up her career because her husband's convalescence was going to take a significant amount of time. So there at St. James Presbyterian on 101st Street in New York, she looked around and said, I've got to do something. There's much that can be done to make these kids' lives better. And her husband pushed her and said, honey, go, do this. And so she used the St. James Community Center to create a music school for the youth of the area. And that school she named the Harlem School of the Arts. It started out with 20 students, and here world-renowned soprano Dorothy Maynard was giving piano lessons at the St. James Community Center to 20 kids on 141st Street. But for Dorothy Maynard, it was the beginning of a very important and special journey. She knew something was going to happen. She said, what I dream of is changing the image held by the children. We've made them believe that everything beautiful is outside this community. We would like them to make beauty inside this community. And I want to read to you a little bit from a book. This is a wonderful book called And So I Sing, African American Divas of Opera and Concert. And this is just about her vision for the school. She says, as the school grew, funding became a matter of survival and future growth. Taking advantage of her standing in the music world, Maynard used her connections unabashedly and with business-like aplomb. With the dedication and spirit of a third world missionary, she canvassed the worlds of music and money, winning wealthy souls to the cause of prying open purses with her visionary dream. Few could resist the plea of one of the world's great singers. The Ford, Kresge, and Mellon Foundation and the Marion Ascoli Fund came up with $3.5 million for a new building that would include space for theater, photography, ethnic and modern dance, classical ballet instruction, and a library. And even though lesson costs were kept to a bare minimum, a sliding scale was used to accommodate even the lowest family income, a healthy percentage was set aside for scholarships. Maynard's dream for the Harlem School of the Arts now stands next to the St. James Parish, a 37,000 square foot brick structure crowding the sidewalk along St. Nicholas Avenue between 141st and 143rd Streets. And interestingly enough, another North Carolina connection, when Dorothy Maynard retired as the leader of the founding director of the Harlem School for the Arts, Betty Allen took her position. Betty Allen was on the voice faculty at the North Carolina School of the Arts, and she left that position to take over from Dorothy Maynor at the School of the Arts in Harlem. At that point, she and her husband retired, and Dorothy Maynor actually passed away in 1996 of pneumonia. An inauspicious end to a very beautiful and very important career. Beautiful, beautiful singer. And I'm happy. I hope that you will. It's a little tricky to find more Dorothy Maynor out there, but look for her, and we'll try to feed you some more as well. It's a beautiful voice and a career that could and should have been much larger. I'll add for my final postscript before I hand it over to Steve that she may never have appeared at the Metropolitan Opera, but at the end of her life, she was appointed to the board of the Metropolitan Opera and was the first African American to be a board member of the Metropolitan Opera. And that makes a good segue to your honor,
That's right.
Steve.
So I'm going to say hello to Smadar. They're up there, and she says she highly recommends watching the Carmen from Vienna, but of course, after we watch UNCSA operas tonight. So that's
Well done, Smadar.
Yeah. And then Jessica Williams Wilson,
Jessica.
she says, listen to the lambs all a-crying.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it.
That's it.
I knew I could count on my symphony chorale people.
Okay, so my artist of the end of the month is Martina Arroyo. And Martina Arroyo is a very celebrated African-American soprano who sang all over the world, but it may not have turned out that way for her. So she was born in New York City. Her father had a good job. They were of the middle class. They had money. They had enough to guarantee an education. She was going to college. That was the issue. The parents were saying, "You're going to college," and so her interest in theater started in the 1940s. She and her mother would go to Broadway shows, and she would see people on the stage, and she said, "I want to be on the stage," and she was piqued there. So her mother gave her ballet lessons and taught her piano lessons, and she sang in the church choir like many do, and that's their interest into singing. So she gets to a certain age, and I believe she went to college early. It looks like she went to college around the age of 16. And she went to Hunter College, where she got, of all things, a Bachelor of Arts in Romance Languages. And voice was a hobby, so she studied voice on the side. But there were so many people interested in her singing that she was quickly whisked away to a teacher by the name of Marinka Gerwich, who also taught such singers as Marcia Baldwin, Grace Bunbury, Lawrence Cuivar, Diana Soviero. And this teacher gave her a wake-up call and said, "You need to be a singer," and put her in touch with her agent, who she stayed with for the rest of her life, Thea Despecker. So her teacher invited the agent to come. This is how it used to work in those days. There were certain teachers, and you could have an agent come and do a private listening in lesson, and then give some advice, and that's how people got agents, or somebody who's going to help them out in their career. And so she got an agent, but she had to work. She had to make money. So you have an agent, you're doing, for an African American soprano starting out, very difficult, except for giving, again, concerts. It was now Martina Arroyo was a bit later, so her entrance into the opera stage was a bit easier, but still not great. And mostly started in Europe, like most singers. She worked as an English teacher by the day and tried to study voice at night. And she would work as an English teacher, and she would go to the Hunter Opera Workshop, where she would try to do scenes and get some stagecraft in the evenings. Then that zapped too much of her energy, because as we all know, being a teacher, you really have to give all day. So then she tried her hand at being a social worker, which, if you can imagine, I met Martina Arroyo very briefly once. I cannot imagine her as a social worker. I guys can't imagine it. And then she had to find a way to balance work with singing, and social working seemed to be able to do that for her, because it wasn't a 9 to 5, it was a case-by-case thing, and she was able to balance it a bit better. And so she decided in 1957, the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions used to be called the Metropolitan Opera Auditions of the Air. Because as you remember, the Metropolitan Opera were the first people to broadcast opera on the radio. So they would have this competition, and they would have the finals on the radio, and then these people would sing. Well, she entered in 1957, and she didn't win. And so she thought, well, that's it. I'm not going to be a singer, so I'm going to go back and begin work on a master's degree in comparative literature at NYC. So again, obviously a very intelligent woman, much like Dorothy Maynor there, very okay, I've got to make a living, and if I can't win that, what's going to happen? Well, she was encouraged, and luckily for us, the next year, she was part of the Metropolitan Auditions of the Year, and we're going to play a clip here now for you of her at that. You'll hear the radio announcer announcing her, and then you'll get a little bit of bio of her, and then she's going to sing from Aida at 22 years old, I must say, O Patria Mia.
Martina Arroyo's third appearance on these auditions of the air, as it does for her three young colleagues. Like Miss Messina, she is New York born and New York trained. First performances and her background having come from the New York school system, including, of course, her stage debuts having come to college opera Wiltshire. Miss Arroyo has been heard in Bad Boys by Meyerowitz and will be Eurydice in Darius Milhaud's version of the Orpheus legend this coming May. This evening, for her climactic appearance on these auditions of the air, Martina Arroyo sings O Patria Mia from Verdi's Aida.
YouTube Premium removes interruptions from your favorite music. Start a free trial now.
With Max Rudolph on the podium, Martina Arroyo has sung O Patria Mia from Verdi's Aida. Our heartiest congratulations, Miss Arroyo. Here is your check from the American Broadcasting Network.
Wasn't that great? I mean, 22 years old. Luckily that happened, because that's the thing that gave her, first of all, major national exposure, because it's on the radio, and secondly, a chance to have this career, because it was validation of what this career could be. So for that competition, she won a grand total of $1,000, and now it's $15,000 at the big level now. So really, that was. If you do it by inflation, it probably hasn't gone up proportionally. And she got to study at what was then called the Met's Catherine Long School, where she studied stage combat and acting and movement and all the things that you needed to be an opera singer. That was the big deal, because you got a place where you could have training and it was paid for. That was the best part. And then after that, she her American opera debut, if you will, was in the American premiere of Pizzetti's Murder in the Cathedral. And she played a very small part, like the first or second caliphate. But luckily enough, Jamie and I both have a connection to Murder in the Cathedral, because our teacher at Indiana University, Nicola Rossi-Lameni, played Thomas Beckett in Murder in the Cathedral. And so he was in that. It was supposed to happen outdoors, but it rained at a festival in New York State, and it rained out. So they did it luckily in Carnegie Hall on September 17th, 1958, so the same year that she won the Metropolitan Opera auditions of the year, and that was the thing that catapulted her.
And that role, by the way, is the largest female role in that opera.
It is, yeah. Jamie actually knows a bit of the music of Pizzetti, so looking forward to that. So Martina Arroyo, the New York Times wrote, is a gifted soprano who appears to have remarkable potential, and she sang with a voice of amplitude and lovely color. So, having won the Met competition, the Met auditions of the year, she made her Met debut, but as the offstage celestial voice in Verdi's Don Carlo. Now, at 23, to be fair, she probably was not ready to sing Elisabetta at 23 years old. So, to be fair, that was, if they're going to do a Verdi opera, that was probably the role that she needed to do. But she saw also that probably it wasn't going to be big roles for her at the Metropolitan Opera at that time. She, like many singers, had to go to Europe to establish herself. And so she went to Europe, and that same year she got small roles in operas, and then she got large roles. They were obscure works or premieres. So they would feature her in those. But in 1963 in Zurich, they took a chance on her, and she sang her first Aida in Zurich at the Zurich Opera House, and she sang there with Zurich regularly through 1968. In 1964, and so it's after her Zurich Hall debut in Aida, she was called to the Met to replace Birgit Nilsson in Aida. I don't know, Birgit Nilsson singing Aida. I don't even know how that sounds.
She recorded it.
So, but she was there to replace her in 1964, and then sang things at the Met like Amelio in Ballo Maschera, which is on tomorrow night, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, not her not singing it, but yes. Ciociosan and Madame Butterfly. Donna and Don Giovanni and Leonore and Trovatore, the big diva lady she was able to do. And so she had a very international career. Jamie reminded me that she would be on Johnny Carson. She was one of the people who would come on Johnny Carson, and that when opera singers were actually personalities and celebrities, and Johnny would have them on, and Pavarotti was on there, talking about playing tennis, because they both played tennis, Beverly Sills, Marilyn Horne. So that whole era of 1960s, 70s singers had a very national exposure. She retired in 1989 with a performance of Turandot at Seattle Opera, but she was lured back out of retirement in 1991 to do Leslie Adams' black opera, which is set in the pre-Civil War, and lives about slaves in America. She was lured out to do that one performance in 1991. She was honored with the NEA Award in 2010. In 1976, President Ford appointed her to the National Council for the Arts as a voice there, and she was a Kennedy Center honoree in 2013. So she's had many, many honors. She also has had teaching positions at Louisiana State, UCLA, the Mozarteum in Salzburg, Germany, and Indiana University. She was there for a while. But the most, to tie her in with our previous artist, she saw a need for young singers to get exposure. And so she founded this thing called Martina Arroyo's Prelude to Performance in New York City, which at first was what we call a pay to sing. You paid money and you got to work with Martina Arroyo, an artist, and do a production in New York City. Then she raised enough money to have people, you had to house yourself, but you could sing for free. You could go for free. You didn't have to pay. You just had to find a place to live in New York City. And then finally, now I don't know how it is now because we had to turn down the economy, but I'm sure there was a little bit of money that they were paying the singers. But it was a chance to work with people from the Met, work with coaches, conductors, and they do in the Danny Kaye Playhouse. They do a real production. Actually, several of our alumni have been there, but Josh Conyers sang the role of Don Giovanni. I actually got to go see him in that. It's a very production, orchestra, chorus, costumes, the whole thing. Get some New York press and get these singers launched into a career. We've had Jennifer Lazar sang there as well as Lindsay Metcher. We've had several of our singers in that performance. It's a wonderful way to give back. She has a foundation, and that money all goes for the singers. And she's the head of it, and she's very present. She's not just a figurehead. I mean, she's at the rehearsal. She's there. They get to know her. They do study roles, study character work, etc. I'd like to close out, though. So should we close out with the recording, or do you want to go back and talk? Let me close out with the recording. So here are two spirituals. We didn't get to hear. She didn't perform this way a lot in recital. She was mostly a concert singer, or she did it was like oratorio with orchestra. But here are two spirituals recorded around 1960 with Martina Arroyo, a soprano. So Hal Garrison says there was some. You were hearing 2 tracks at once, so I hope that not all of you were hearing it that way. It was only 1 track, so I'm sorry if that was the case. But just an incredible human being and an incredible talent. Google her and just I'm sure Johnny Carson is out there somewhere that you can watch her be herself. And
I remember watching Carson with my mom when I was in, I guess, high school, and I didn't know who she was, but I remember she was a pistol.
Yeah.
I mean, she was funny. Carson frequently had the artists that appeared with Los Angeles Opera on, as you said, and she was the one I didn't know, and she was great. She was just funny.
So get to know these black artists if you don't know them. Surely, if you're an opera lover, you surely know Martina Arroyo, but you may not have known Dorothy Maynor, and that's someone that you need to know.
And how beautiful that both of these ladies understood that they needed to provide something. They needed to provide for the next generation. I always talk about why one of the many reasons that Verdi is my favorite composer is because he took his money and made the retirement home,
and built a hospital too.
Exactly, to take care of singers and musicians who didn't have funds at the ends of the careers that in which they spent their lives making his music. And these ladies kind of did and are doing the same thing.
Right.
The Harlem School for the Arts is thriving right now and bringing so many talented kids the education that they wouldn't receive otherwise. And Martina Arroyo's work with young singers is extraordinary and changing careers.
Absolutely.
Really.
I mean, it's more important now than ever as we see arts education being taken away from public schools, that there be a place that people have access to explore whether or not this is even a possibility for them, which I think is really great. So hats off to both those ladies.
Yes, and much credit to them that in a country that didn't always bring them the beautiful life that they deserved, they have given back to this country to strive to bring beauty to the communities that they work in. Whether it's in Dorothy Maynor's case, the Harlem community, or really with Martina Arroyo, it's the operatic community.
Absolutely. I mean, it's rare that, and it takes a lot of time to do that too. It's not like she just sits at home. I mean, she has to, because she's the one. I mean, she's the one that's raising the money because she's Martina Arroyo. I mean, she's got people working for her, but she's probably the one that closes the deal more than anything.
Yeah. So as we sign off today, we finish Black History Month, and we are headed right into Women's History Month. And the Metropolitan Opera will start celebrating that next week, starting on Monday night. They've got a lineup for you of lots of important women in opera. On Monday night, we get to see Beverly Sills in Don Pasquale. On Tuesday night, we get to see, oh my goodness, Mirella Freni, Barbara Bonney, Marilyn Horne, Susan Graham, all in Verdi's Falstaff. On Wednesday night, we get to see Hildegard Behrens, Jesse Norman, and Christa Ludwig in Die Walküre, and it is the Otto Schenk production, so it's a beautiful, beautiful production. Thursday night's Magic Flute is actually, it's the director that is the salute in the Women's History Month, I suspect, with Julie Taymor's production of Magic Flute. Peter Grimes features Patricia Rissette. Rusalka features, it's the same production we just spent time with our friend Emily McGee a little bit ago, Renee Fleming and Emily McGee and Dolores Zajic. And on Sunday night, it's Leontine Price again in Forza del Destino, but I tell you, I don't know if you can ever see her sing Forza del Destino too many times. That works for me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so anything else? We have La Lunch next week.
Is it next week already?
Is it next? No, it's a week after?
I think yes.
I'm a week off.
So the most important thing I can tell you is if you're in an exploratory mode, I hope we'll see you tonight for the Garcia double bill coming live from Stevens Center to your home, and you can go to uncsa.edu and find your way to the homepage, and it's also in the feed today.
Right, and you can just click on performances. It'll take you there. You have to register. There's no charge. You just have to register to get the link. So it'll say how many tickets to buy. One, there will be no charge. They're just going to ask you for an email address so they can send you the link so you can watch it. And we've been very proud of it, and it's new territory for us, and grateful here to Piedmont Opera, who kind of taught me a little bit about it when they did their Echoes from Carolina, so I kind of understood a bit more of how this was going to work. So hope we see you tonight or Sunday afternoon at 2. Tonight at 7:30, Sunday afternoon at 2.
So for both of us here at Piedmont Opera, and thanks to Jen Rhymes, and today your pilot behind the camera was Meredith Aponitis. It was her first time out. Give her a round of applause.
And Honey Quinn on the feed downstairs.
That's right, and we'll see you all next Friday. Thanks for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.